Captain Vexthera's 6 eyes gleamed with greed as she studied the star charts on her command screen. The Zephyrian pirate had built her reputation on taking risks that others wouldn't dare, but this was different. Captain, her first mate Krill wheezed through his breathing apparatus. The Galactic Council has marked this entire sector as forbidden. No ship has returned from there in over 50 cycles. Vexthera's mandibles clicked in amusement. Exactly why it's perfect, my dear Krill. Whatever the humans are hiding in there must be worth a fortune. The Council doesn't declare entire star systems off-limits for nothing. The bridge of the Void Reaper hummed with nervous energy as her crew of various alien species went about their duties. Vexthera had assembled the most ruthless pirates from across the galaxy, Zephyrians, Krillians, Nexari, and even a few rogue ethereals. They had raided merchant vessels from the outer rim to the core worlds, but human space had always been untouchable. But Captain Krill pressed, his gill slits fluttering anxiously. The humans, they're different. Dangerous. The stories we hear are just stories, Vexthera snapped, her tail lashing behind her. Primitive mammals who got lucky with faster-than-light travel. They've been in space for barely 2 centuries while we've been sailing the void for millennia. She activated the ship's intercom, her voice carrying to every deck. Listen up, you scavengers. We're about to make the score of a lifetime. The human restricted zone ahead contains more wealth than all our previous raids combined. Whatever they're guarding so jealously will soon be ours. Cheers erupted from the crew quarters, but Vexthera noticed the silence from her bridge officers. Good. A little fear kept them sharp. Set course for the restricted zone, she commanded. And ready all weapons. If we encounter any human vessels, we'll show them what real predators look like. The Void Reaper lurched forward, its quantum drives pushing them toward the edge of human space. Behind them, the familiar stars of the galaxy faded, replaced by the eerie red glow of the nebula that marked the boundary of the forbidden zone. As they crossed the threshold, every sensor on the ship began screaming warnings. The space ahead was filled with strange energy signatures, gravitational anomalies, and something else, something that made even Vexthera's predatory instincts whisper warnings. Captain, the ship's AI announced in its cold, mechanical voice, we are now entering human-controlled space. Warning, this area is under strict quarantine protocols. Quarantine? Vexthera laughed, though the sound carried less confidence than before. From what? Some human plague. But as they pressed deeper into the restricted zone, the crew began to notice something unsettling. The space around them wasn't empty, it was filled with debris. Massive pieces of metal and composite materials drifted silently through the void, scarred by weapons fire and twisted by forces beyond comprehension. Captain Krill's voice was barely a whisper, those aren't human ships. Vexthera studied the wreckage more carefully. He was right. The technology was clearly alien, some of it Zephyrian, some Krillian, some from species she didn't even recognize. All of it destroyed. Perhaps, she said slowly, we should proceed with more caution. But it was too late. On the edge of their sensors, something massive was moving toward them. Something that dwarfed even their considerable ship. Unknown vessel, a calm human voice crackled over their communications array, you have entered restricted space. This is your only warning. Turn back immediately. Vexthera's blood ran cold. Not because of the threat, but because of what she saw on her forward screen. The voice wasn't coming from a ship. It was coming from a structure so vast it blocked out the stars themselves. By the void, Krill breathed, his 6 arms trembling as he worked the sensor controls. Captain, that thing, it's not a ship. It's a space station. No, it's bigger than a moon. Vexthera stared at the forward screen, her predatory confidence evaporating like atmosphere through a hull breach. The structure before them defied comprehension, a massive geometric construction that seemed to fold in on itself, covered in what looked like millions of weapon emplacements and sensor arrays. Scan it, she ordered, her voice barely steady. The sensor officer, a nervous Nexari named Quilks, worked frantically at his station. Captain, the readings are impossible. The structure is approximately 15,000 kilometers in diameter. It's constructed from materials I've never seen before, some kind of crystalline metal composite that's simultaneously harder than neutronium and somehow flexible. Weapons? Vexthera asked, though she dreaded the answer. I've counted over 3 million individual weapon systems so far, and the scan isn't even halfway complete. Captain, this thing could vaporize entire fleets. The human voice came again, still calm, still patient. Unknown vessel, you have 30 seconds to begin turning around. I really don't want to have to clean up another debris field. Another debris field. All the wreckage they'd seen, it wasn't from some ancient battle. It was from other pirates who had thought they could challenge humanity. This is Captain Vexthera of the Void Reaper, she broadcast, trying to inject authority into her voice. We're explorers. We mean no harm. A sound came over the comm that chilled her to her core, human laughter. It wasn't the maniacal laugh of a mad Ann or the cold calculation of a predator. It was genuinely amused, like an adult watching a child play dress-up. Explorers, the voice repeated. With military-grade weapons, jammers, and a crew wanted by the Galactic Council for 17 counts of piracy, 43 counts of murder, and, oh my, 6 counts of genocide. Very thorough explorers. Vexthera's heart skipped. They knew exactly who she was, exactly what she'd done. But how? Let me introduce myself, the human continued. My name is Commander Jackson Hayes, and I'm the current operator of Deep Space Monitoring Station Cerberus. I've been watching your ship since you entered the outer system. Your quantum signature is quite distinctive. Impossible, Quilks whispered. Our stealth systems are the most advanced in the galaxy. Are they? Hayes' voice carried a note of genuine curiosity. That's interesting. Our sensors picked you up from about 3 light-years away. Your stealth technology is actually quite loud on the gravitational spectrum. Suddenly, the massive station began to move. Not the slow, ponderous movement of a space station adjusting its orbit, but with the fluid grace of a living thing. Weapon ports that had been closed began to iris open, revealing depths that seemed to swallow light itself. Captain, Quilk screamed. I'm reading massive energy buildups across the station. Whatever those weapons are, they're charging. Turn us around, Vexthera ordered. Full reverse. I'm trying, Captain, but something's wrong with the engines. They're not responding. Hayes' voice came again, still calm. I'm afraid I can't let you leave just yet. You see, you've seen too much. The location of the station, our defensive capabilities, that information can't be allowed to reach the galaxy at large. You're going to kill us? Vexthera's voice cracked. Kill you? Oh no, Captain. That would be wasteful. You're going to help us with a little problem we've been having. The station's massive bulk began to rotate, bringing what looked like a docking bay into view. But as the Void Reaper was drawn inexorably toward it by some invisible force, Vexthera realized it wasn't a docking bay at all. It was a mouth. The Void Reaper shuddered as it was drawn into the station's maw, passing through some kind of energy barrier that made every alien on board feel like insects caught in amber. Vexthera's crew pressed themselves against the viewports, staring in disbelief at the interior of the human construct. It was a city, not a space station interior with corridors and chambers, but an actual city floating in a vast hollow space. Buildings that defied physics stretched in impossible directions, connected by streams of light that pulsed with energy. Gardens floated freely in the artificial atmosphere, tended by machines that moved with organic fluidity. By the ancient void, Krill whispered. How is this possible? Commander Hayes' voice filled the bridge, but now it seemed to come from everywhere at once. Welcome to Cerberus Station, Captain Vexthera. Population: approximately 47 million. 47 million? Vexthera's voice was barely a whisper. That's larger than most planets. It is, isn't it? And that's just the permanent residents. We also have about 3 million temporary guests. The ship was being guided by some invisible force toward a landing platform that materialized out of the station's structure like living metal. As they descended, Vexthera could see other ships, hundreds of them, thousands even. Ships from every known species in the galaxy, all bearing the scars of battle. Those ships, she said, realization dawning. They're all pirates, raiders, slavers, and various other undesirables who thought they could challenge humanity in our own space. Hayes confirmed. We've been collecting them for about 50 years now. The Void Reaper touched down with barely a whisper of sound. Through the viewports, Vexthera could see figures approaching their ship, humans, but not like any she'd ever seen described. They moved with predatory grace, their eyes reflecting light like nocturnal hunters. They wore no armor, carried no visible weapons, but every instinct Vexthera had developed over centuries of piracy screamed danger. Now, Hayes continued, I need you and your crew to exit your vessel. Don't worry about weapons, they won't work here anyway. And if we refuse? Then you'll discover what happened to the crew of the Stellar Dominion. They were quite stubborn too. We ended up having to vent their ship's atmosphere. Very messy. Vexthera's mandibles clicked nervously. She'd heard of the Stellar Dominion, a massive dreadnought that had vanished while raiding human colonies. The airlock cycled open, and Vexthera found herself face to face with her first human. He was tall, pale, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold depths of knowledge that made her uncomfortable. When he smiled, she noticed his teeth were perfectly white and perfectly sharp. "Captain Vexthera," he said, his voice carrying Hayes' distinctive tone. "I'm Commander Hayes. Welcome to Cerberus Station." "You're Hayes." Vexthera studied him carefully. "You don't look like the descriptions we have of humans." Hayes' smile widened. "Well, we've made some improvements since we first left Earth. Genetic optimization, cybernetic enhancement, psychological conditioning. We've become quite good at it, actually." Behind him, more humans emerged from the station's structure. They all had that same predatory grace, that same unsettling smile. "Improvements?" Krill asked, his voice trembling. "Oh yes," Hayes replied. "You see, when humanity first ventured into space, we discovered something quite disturbing. The galaxy is full of species that consider us prey, younger, weaker, less advanced. Pirates like yourselves saw Earth as a prime target." Vexthera's blood ran cold. "The missing colony ships." "Exactly. 17 colony ships carrying over 2 million civilians. All destroyed or enslaved by pirates before they could establish new worlds." Hayes' expression never changed, but something in his eyes shifted, becoming colder. "That's when we decided to stop being prey." He gestured to the vast city around them. "We spent 50 years becoming something new, something better. Something that could protect itself." 3 days after their capture, Vexthera sat in what the humans called an orientation chamber, a room that somehow managed to be both comfortable and deeply unsettling. The walls displayed images of space, but the stars moved in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Commander Hayes sat across from her at a table that seemed to be made from a single piece of some unknown crystal. Between them lay a data pad displaying information that made Vexthera's blood run cold. "This is impossible," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "These numbers, they can't be real?" Hayes nodded sympathetically. "I know it's a lot to process. When we first compiled the data, even we were surprised by the scope of the problem. The data pad showed a holographic map of the galaxy, but it wasn't the familiar political boundaries that every spacefaring species knew. Instead, it showed something else, streams of red light flowing between systems, connecting planets and trade routes in a web of violence and exploitation. Every red line represents a piracy route, Hayes explained. Every pulse of light is a raid, an attack, a ship destroyed or enslaved. We've been monitoring galactic crime for 50 years, and the picture that emerged was disturbing." Vexthera stared at the map. Her own operations were there, glowing like infected wounds across multiple sectors. But she was just one small node in a vast network that spanned the entire galaxy. 47 billion sentient beings, Hayes continued, enslaved, killed, or displaced by piracy in the last century alone. That's roughly equivalent to the population of a major world dying every single day. The Galactic Council, has been compromised from the beginning, Hayes interrupted. 3 of the 5 major species on the Council derive significant portions of their economy from piracy. Not directly, of course. They're very careful about that. But the slave markets, the black market technology, the salvage operations, it all flows through their space. Vexthera felt sick. She'd always known piracy was profitable, but she'd never seen it laid out like this, a galactic plague consuming entire civilizations. The Zephyrians alone, Hayes said, highlighting her own species on the map, have destroyed over 300 colony ships in the past 50 years. Not raided, destroyed. Entire populations wiped out because they couldn't pay tribute. "I didn't know," Vexthera whispered. "I believe you," Hayes said, and his voice carried genuine sympathy. "Most pirates don't see the bigger picture. They see individual raids, individual scores. They don't see the cumulative effect of their actions." The chamber's walls shifted, showing images of devastated worlds, colonies reduced to ash, space stations torn apart, massive ships drifting dead in the void with their hulls cracked open like eggs. "This is why we retreated to human space," Hayes continued. "Not out of fear, but out of necessity. We needed time to develop the tools to fight back. Not just against individual pirates, but against the entire system that enables them. The restricted zones. Our processing centers," Hayes confirmed. "Cerberus is just one of 12 stations where we bring captured pirates and raiders. We study them, learn from them, and eventually rehabilitate them." Vexthera looked up sharply. "What do you mean by rehabilitate?" Hayes smiled, and for the first time since their capture, it looked genuinely warm. "Would you like to see?" Before Vexthera could answer, the chamber's walls became transparent, revealing the vast interior of the station beyond. What she saw made her gasp in shock. Her crew was there, but they were different. Krill was working alongside a team of humans and other aliens, his 6 arms moving with enhanced precision as he operated machinery that seemed to respond to his thoughts. Quilks was interfacing directly with computer systems, his consciousness merged with the station's AI in ways that should have been impossible. But most shocking of all, they looked happy. "We don't just imprison pirates," Hayes explained. "We give them something they've never had before, purpose." The medical bay of Cerberus Station was unlike anything Vexthera had ever imagined. Instead of the sterile, clinical environment she expected, it felt almost organic. Walls that pulsed gently with bioluminescent patterns, equipment that seemed to grow from the floor rather than being built, and an atmosphere that somehow felt alive. Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, the station's chief medical officer, was examining readouts that floated in holographic displays around Vexthera's reclining form. Like all the humans on the station, she had that enhanced quality that made her movements seem almost supernatural. "The neurological scarring is quite extensive," Dr. Morrison said, her voice carrying both professional detachment and genuine concern. "Zephyrian brain chemistry is complex under normal circumstances, but years of violence and exploitation have created some interesting pathways." "Interesting?" Vexthera asked, trying to keep the nervousness out of her voice. "Your species naturally has very high empathy levels. It's one of your survival traits. But prolonged exposure to violence triggers defensive mechanisms that essentially shut down your ability to feel for others. It's a neurological adaptation to prevent psychological breakdown." Commander Hayes stood nearby, observing the examination with interest. "In other words, you weren't born evil, Captain. You became what you are as a defense mechanism." "That doesn't excuse what I've done," Vexthera said quietly. "No," Hayes agreed. "But it explains it. And more importantly, it means we can reverse it." Dr. Morrison manipulated the holographic displays, showing cross-sections of Vexthera's brain. "The rehabilitation process works in 3 stages. First, we repair the neurological damage using targeted nanobots. Then we use controlled exposure therapy to help you process the emotional impact of your actions. Finally, we provide psychological conditioning to help you develop new behavioral patterns." "How long does it take?" "The medical procedures are complete within hours. The psychological rehabilitation takes longer, usually 6 to 8 months. But you'll be conscious and aware throughout the process. You'll remember everything, understand everything, and choose how to respond to it." Vexthera looked at the displays showing her own brain. "And if I can't handle it? If the guilt is too much? Then we help you find ways to cope," Dr. Morrison said simply. "We don't abandon anyone who chooses this path. The process has a 97% success rate." "What about the 3% who don't succeed?" Hayes and Dr. Morrison exchanged glances. "They choose to return to minimum security confinement," Hayes said carefully. "The emotional impact is significant. Not everyone can handle truly understanding what they've done." "Can I talk to them?" she asked. "My crew." "Of course," Hayes said. "In fact, Krill specifically asked to speak with you before you made your decision." The wall near Vexthera's medical bed shimmered and became transparent. On the other side, she could see Krill approaching with that same enhanced grace all the rehabilitated prisoners displayed. "Captain," he said, his voice carrying warmth she'd never heard before. "How are you feeling?" "Confused," she admitted. "You seem different." Krill's gill slits fluttered in what she recognized as amusement. "I am different. I remember everything I did, every life I helped destroy, every family I tore apart. But I also understand why I did it, and I have the strength to make amends." "The guilt doesn't overwhelm you?" "It did at first. For about a week, I could barely function. But Dr. Morrison and her team helped me through it. They showed me that guilt, properly channeled, can become purpose." "What kind of purpose?" Krill's expression became serious. "I've been working with the Cleanup Fleet's tactical division. My knowledge of Krillian raiding patterns has helped them protect 3 colony convoys in the past month. Lives that would have been lost are now safe." "That's good," Vexthera said, though she wasn't sure she meant it. "It's better than good," Krill said earnestly. "Captain, for the first time in my life, I sleep peacefully. I wake up knowing that my actions are making the galaxy a better place." I found something I never knew I was missing. What's that? Honor. The word hit Vexthera like a physical blow. Honor. Such a simple concept, but one that had been completely absent from her life for so long she'd forgotten it existed. After Krill left, Dr. Morrison ran a few more tests while Hayes waited patiently. Finally, the doctor stepped back from the holographic displays. Your physiology is compatible with the rehabilitation process, she said. The decision is yours to make. Vexthera looked around the medical bay, thinking of all the lives she'd destroyed, all the families she'd torn apart, all the civilizations she'd helped cripple. Then she thought of her crew, working with purpose and joy, finally able to live with honor. If I do this, she said slowly, will I be able to undo the damage I've caused? You'll be able to prevent others from causing similar damage, Hayes said. And you'll be able to save lives that would otherwise be lost. It's not the same as undoing the past, but it's a way to balance the scales. Vexthera thought of the 47 billion beings who had died because of galactic piracy. She thought of the colony ships her own species had destroyed. She thought of the countless victims whose names she'd never learned. I want to do it, she said quietly. Dr. Morrison nodded. The procedure will begin in 1 hour. Are you ready? As ready as I can be. But as the medical staff began their preparations, Vexthera couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to die, not physically, but everything she had been would cease to exist, replaced by someone who could feel the weight of every life she'd taken. It was terrifying. It was also the first truly brave thing she'd ever done. Vexthera awoke to a symphony of sensation and understanding that threatened to overwhelm her consciousness. Every nerve in her body felt hyperaware, every thought crystal clear, and every memory carried the weight of its true emotional impact. She was no longer in the medical bay. Instead, she found herself in a comfortable room with walls that displayed gentle, flowing patterns of light. The furniture was soft and organic, seemingly grown rather than built. And sitting in a chair across from her was a figure she recognized but had never truly seen before. It was herself, but not herself. The figure was translucent, like a hologram, but Vexthera could feel its presence as if it were physically real. Hello, Vexthera, the figure said, and its voice was her own but somehow different, sadder, wiser, carrying the weight of understanding. I am who you were. I don't understand, Vexthera said, surprised by the clarity of her own voice. The rehabilitation process creates a temporary psychological construct, the figure explained. I am the sum of all your memories, all your actions, all your choices, but now I understand their true cost. I'm here to help you process what you've done. And then it began. The memories came flooding back, but not as she had experienced them. Instead, she saw them through the eyes of her victims. She felt the terror of the colonists as her ship appeared on their sensors. She experienced the desperation of families torn apart by her slave raids. She understood the grief of parents whose children had been taken, the fear of traders who had lost everything to her greed. The merchant vessel Prosperity's dream, her psychological construct said gently. You remember it? Vexthera did remember. A simple cargo hauler carrying medical supplies to a frontier colony. They'd taken the ship's contents and sold the crew into slavery. She'd thought of it as a minor score, barely worth recording in her logs. But now she saw it differently. The medical supplies had been desperately needed antibiotics for a plague outbreak. Without them, over 3,000 colonists had died. The ship's captain had been a father of 4, trying to earn enough money to send his children to good schools. The crew had been young beings just starting their careers, with families waiting for them to return home. I killed them, Vexthera whispered, the full weight of understanding crushing down on her. I killed them all. Yes, her construct agreed. But you didn't understand that then. You couldn't feel their pain because your empathy had been suppressed by years of violence. The memories continued, each one more devastating than the last. The colony ships her species had destroyed. The slave markets where she'd sold sentient beings like cargo. The raids that had left entire space stations as derelict hulks drifting in the void. But gradually, something else began to emerge from the pain. Understanding. Not just of what she had done, but of why she had done it. She saw the chain of events that had led her to piracy, the poverty of her youth, the violence of her society, the gradual erosion of her moral compass as she was forced to make increasingly desperate choices. I didn't choose this, she said, though the words felt hollow. You did choose it, her construct replied. But you chose it from a place of pain and desperation. You chose it because you couldn't see any other way to survive. That doesn't excuse it. No, it doesn't. But it explains it. And understanding why you made those choices is the first step toward making different ones. Hours passed, or perhaps days. Time seemed fluid in this space between consciousness and dreams. Vexthera experienced every significant moment of her criminal career, feeling the full emotional impact of each decision. She wept for her victims, raged at her own blindness, and slowly began to understand the true scope of the damage she had caused. But she also began to understand something else. Redemption was possible. The cleanup fleet, her construct said as the memories began to fade. You know how pirates think, how they operate, where they hide. You can use that knowledge to protect innocent lives. Can I really make a difference? You can make a choice, the construct replied. Every day, every moment, you can choose to be better than you were. You can choose to protect instead of exploit, to create instead of destroy, to heal instead of harm. The guilt will never go away, will it? No, her construct said gently. But it will become bearable. And eventually it will become strength.